Hello, and we are live. Welcome to another special edition of the Dan Assor Show in partnership with Expo Stars. Going to be introducing MD of Expo Stars, Lee Ali, in a second. Thank you for watching. For those that are watching live, it is a nice, as you know, sunny afternoon in London. It's Tuesday, the 14th of June. Hopefully it's sunny wherever else you are in the world. Thank you for watching live. Thank you for listening on demand. This is the fourth episode of a monthly series in partnership with trade show audience engagement specialist Expo Stars. And I'm going to introduce you to the MD of Expo Stars, Lee Ali. Hello, Lee.
Hello, Dan. How are you?
I'm very well. I know you've been globe-trotting like Phileas Fogg all over the world, for those people of a certain age that can remember who Phileas Fogg was, but possibly not in a hot air balloon. Lee, tell us who you are. Just introduce yourself and the business as normal for those that aren't aware, please.
Sure. I'm the founder and MD of Expo Stars Interactive. We're an agency that specializes in helping exhibitors engage with their target audience at trade show exhibitions around the globe. And we've been globetrotting since 2007, working from Los Angeles all the way to Sydney, Australia.
You're name dropping now. You're showing off. I should say that if you have a question for Lee, whether you're watching live or on demand, please pop it in the LinkedIn comments chat. I'm sure he will come back to you. So, Lee, we're going to be talking about trade show engagement optimization, and specifically all about defining KPIs, key performance indicators. Had to remind myself what that stood for a second. Before we do that, you have coined this an acronym, TEO, Trade Show Engagement Optimization. This is what this series has all been about, right? So the first three episodes, which are available on the Expo Stars website, expostars.com, have covered three of the five facets of TEO. Before we get into the fourth one into more detail, can you just remind us of what TEO means, please?
Sure. So TEO is my kind of framework that kind of looks at trade shows in a new way. I mean, aside what trade shows traditionally, when companies go to trade shows, what they traditionally do is start looking at the booth design and then saying, right, let's set up everything, and then we'll build it and they will come. And obviously, it doesn't work like that. So what TEO is all about is looking at the framework of what kind of things you need to look at to make sure that your trade show is a success. So we started off in the first week with defining your strategy and how that links in with your business plan and why you should be exhibiting. Then obviously we had to look at your target audience and how do you actually create that attendee journey from before the event, during the event, and after the event as well. And then the last episode that we did, we looked at the booth staffing. So why is it important to actually have the right people on the booth, how you should train them, and what kind of skills and assets they should actually be having at the trade show booth. So and now we're moving on to KPI measurement. And then the fifth one that we'll cover on the next episode obviously will be the follow-up process, where the gold is.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first few episodes are talking about the mining, I guess, of the treasure. And the final one is where the gold is. Now, before we get into that, I referenced that you have been around the world and to some shows. Yeah. So can you bring to life sort of where you've been, maybe some of the things you've seen at the events, and possibly relate them to what we've discussed previously, and then we'll get on to talking about KPI. So I know you said you've been to a trade mission.
Yeah. So one of the great ways a business, especially in the UK or anywhere in the world really, to grow their business internationally, they can actually go on a trade mission. with the local
Okay.
government departments or trade departments. So here in the UK, we have the Department of International Trade, and they all have international advisors, and they all also have the Export Academy. And what they do, the one that I joined with, we have in the UK, well, in the Northwest, we have what we call the Northern Powerhouse, and we went on a group of businesses, about 12 businesses. We went to um, um, Southeast Asia. So Jakarta was our first stop, where we engaged with some of the local organizers there. And then we moved on to Malaysia. We had the opportunity to meet again with some more organizers, and also had the opportunity to go to the Kuala Lumpur Convention Center and
Oh
meet
wow.
with John there as well. So it was a great trip. And the great thing about it was that um, the the trade advisors and the local chambers of commerce, they actually gave us one-to-one meetings with the kind of companies that we actually wanted to meet. So if companies are thinking of growing overseas, check out with your local trade organizations, or whether there's chambers of commerce, and look at what trade missions they actually have got going on it, and it does bring up some great opportunities as well.
Oh, that's really good advice, actually.
Yeah,
So it saves you, running on your own steam and having to find out and plan
yeah,
the trip. And I guess it's good networking as well. So
absolutely.
thank you
Yeah,
for
and it's
that.
very cost effective, and it's much cheaper
Yeah.
than trade shows, I could tell you that.
But that money's well spent. So let's get on and talk about this the fourth sort of pillar, if you like, of your TEO, trade show engagement optimization. And a lot of exhibitors, if not most, and you will correct me if I'm wrong,
Yeah,
um, and I guess same in my experience as an event organizer, tend to struggle with measuring and quantifying trade show success.
yeah.
And firstly, why do you think that is? And then we're going to talk about some of the metrics that you need to measure to define success.
Sure, it all boils down to how you actually link trade shows to your overall business strategy. Because a lot of businesses, obviously, they go to exhibits because they've been sold, the floor space, and they don't necessarily link it back to their business growth strategy or their sales strategy. So it's actually understanding your business goals in the first place, and then linking them with your trade show exhibiting. And that's where a lot of companies fall down, and they'll come away with business cards, they'll come away with badge
Yeah.
scans, and then 3 to 6 months down the line, if you do ask them, oh, how successful was that trade show, and they'll probably say, well, we don't know, because we don't know how to measure it.
Mm,
We got a lot of business cards, but I'm not sure how much business we actually got from it. And I mean, this is usually what a lot of companies find themselves doing, because they've not actually related it back to
yeah.
the original business growth plan.
Which we touched upon in the previous episode, and I
Yeah,
think it's becoming ever more important as obviously the industry's reopened in the last sort of 6 months, 6 to 12 months, that people again are having to justify the spend, right? Because
yeah,
it
absolutely.
came out of plans, maybe marketing plans for obvious
Yeah,
reasons, for 18 months, say.
yeah,
Uh, and you could argue, well, we've lived without it.
yeah,
We're doing all right. And actually, it's an expense. It's either going to be now saving, or we're going to redeploy those funds into something else. So
yeah,
it's important that I guess the organizer works with the exhibitor and impresses upon these points that it needs to be
yeah,
measured, and how you're going to measure it, and not to shy away from it. So we're going to talk about the key metrics then you need to measure and define success. And I'm going to put up a little slide. Excuse my face at the top of it. I like to be everywhere. So you've called it
your business Dan plan, is that what it's called? Your business Dan plan? Yeah.
your business plan plan. I'll take that off for you, shall I? Talk me through this. So yeah.
Yeah. So when you look at your business growth, and exhibitions is one channel. Of course, you've got your digital marketing, you've got your sales teams, and then you've got exhibitions, and then you've got your distributors, your partnerships. So, and all of these things obviously make up how you're going to actually grow your business. Okay, so
Sure.
one of the key things that you need to understand to start with the metrics is what is your current turnover. So if you're planning for exhibitions next year, so what you need to do is look at, right, how much turnover are you going to have this year, and how many customers do you actually have making that turnover up. Okay, and then that will actually give you your average customer value. All right, so if you know what your average customer will actually bring you every year, that's your
Sure.
starting point as a metric. Okay, because when you get the leads from your shows and you know what your average customer value is, and then you can look at your conversion rates. Okay, so another key question there is what percentage from existing customers as that turnover come from, and then your goals for next year, what kind of percentage would you be looking at from your existing customers as well. So for example, in my business, I know that year on year, well, pre 2019, pre 2020 anyway, is I knew that going into next year that we would actually keep a minimum of about 70% of our client base. Okay, so to get back to the 100 and then obviously look at my additional business growth, I would obviously define how many new clients I needed, and I knew how many customers I would actually keep, how many would drop off, and how many I would actually need for the following year. So the end question is then, how many new customers do you actually need, and where do those customers come from? Okay, is it going to be your digital marketing? Is it going to be your exhibitions? Is it going through your key partners, for example, or your resellers? So it's once you've actually got how many new customers do you need, then you can start planning, okay, how are we going to get those, and what percentage of those are going to come from trade shows.
Sure. So really, the point is, because someone said, "Well, okay, this is about the business, not necessarily about the exhibitions." But what we're saying is,
Yeah,
like any channel
yeah,
which is there to generate new leads and hopefully business, the trade show part of it, if you're going to be part of a trade show, shouldn't operate as a silo. It needs to
yeah,
be embedded right at the beginning in terms of where you're going to get those customers from, and then
absolutely, yeah.
explain the sales pipeline.
Yeah, so this is the activity calculator that we put into place. And it starts at the top. And the reason why we use this activity calculator is to highlight what businesses need to do to get the number of engagements, to get the number of sales that they actually need. And it's always surprising
Yeah.
when we actually share how many engagements they actually need to hit those targets. So if you have a target of, let's say, you need £100,000 worth of new business, then you look at your average customer value. Let's say that's £10,000, so you need 10
Yeah.
new customers. Okay, are you following me?
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
Yeah, yeah. So if you know your ratio of from sales presentations to getting customers is, let's say, is on average 1 in 4, so you're closing at 25%. Okay, then obviously you need to know that to get 10 customers, you need to make 40 presentations. Okay, to get 40 presentations, if you have, let's say, a 50% closure rate from lead to presentation, you need to get 80 qualified leads.
Yep.
Okay, to get those 80 qualified leads, okay, at a trade show, then you'll need to have what we call engagements and demonstrations. So it could be that 1 in 2 demonstrations leads to a qualified lead. Okay, so that leads, you need to do 160 demonstrations. And to get 160 demonstrations, how many hellos do you need to say?
Yeah.
And that could be 1 in 2 as well. Uh, so 160, that's 320 hellos, engagements that
Yeah.
you need to make during the 3 days or 2 days that you're at the trade show. Okay.
Yeah.
So then what you need to do is plan the activity so that you can actually say and approach 320 people during the 3 days, and then you can actually break it down by hour, by the number of people on your booth. So if you have four representatives, then you can actually say, right, you can each one of you actually has to go out and say hello to 80 people.
Yeah. So you yourself and your team, when you take on board a client, you take them through this sort of analysis, right? Because it's really important they understand what they think they want out of it. And I guess what they want out of it is not always determined by what they're spending.
Yeah.
Because I mean that's one metric, but also there's brand awareness as well, which is
I mean, there are a multitude of things that you can actually measure, and the goals are always different. So the activity plan is when a business really wants, they're going to a trade show to actually generate new business. I mean, there are obviously very high level brands, for example. I mean, I don't think Apple would go through this process.
No. But I'm sure they go through. I'm sure they go through a process where they are measuring against different KPIs, because KPIs, as you know, KPIs don't always have to just be about a number of sales or a number of pounds or dollars or euros.
They can be. I mean,
it's might not be transactional, their booth, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there can be like I know that a lot of companies measure the footfall on the stand. Okay, they also measure the eyeballs, for example. How long did they stay at the booth? A lot of companies measure how many people came to how many presentations they were actually delivered as well. So there's lots and lots of KPIs that you can actually measure, but it's all down to what you actually want to achieve from the show.
So I guess the main takeaway from that is that start with a plan, understand why you're doing this. We spoke about a lot of this in previous episodes, but it's worth reiterating. And then when you get to the end of it, you can work out whether it's you've got something to benchmark it against.
Absolutely,
and then also you can have an appropriate conversation with the show organizer. And I guess it's probably useful in advance to share that to a certain extent with the organizer. And if I'm an organizer, I should be asking those questions. How are you going to define success at this trade show when I phone you up in 3 weeks time or whatever?
Absolutely.
Which I don't think we do enough of. I think as organizers, sometimes we get carried away with the sale. We sold it, and I don't want to speak to you for a while. I'll speak to you afterwards. Oh, how did it go? It was busy, wasn't it? Well, I don't know. It didn't perform against what I wanted. So it's really important to be upfront, I think, as much as possible.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to move on to attendee information as part of this. What information would you suggest we need from attendees as an exhibitor?
Yeah, I think obviously outside of the usual, I think name, email, telephone number. That always helps.
Tinder profile? No.
Yeah. Facebook profile, everything. So I think the key things there are to look at, 3 or 4 different elements. So maybe if you have 3 or 4 different services that you're actually promoting, is to actually put that in the feedback form and actually ask them, what would you actually be interested in? Okay. What aspect of our service? So it could be, consultancy service. It could actually be, 2 or 3 different products that you're promoting. It could be a product launch that you're putting together, that you've showcased at the event. So what is it that they're actually interested about? Okay. And actually and then the other aspect on the lead form is getting their permission as to how they actually want to be followed up, which is what we'll talk more about on the next session. So it's actually looking at what products they're interested in, because that's quite important then, because if you have your average customer value and you already know that, and then you actually drill it down into different product types, what you can do then is assign a value to that product. Okay, so when it comes to measurement in terms of your pipeline, you can actually say we had 20 customers inserted in our widget X, okay?
Yeah.
And that has a defined value of £20,000. And then you can work out that the sales pipeline value, okay, from for this product was X amount, okay? And then obviously you put that against the costs, and then you can actually realize the opportunity versus the cost.
Sure. Because I guess we can get carried away from the booth where someone comes over, we scan their badge, and we think, well, hey,
Yeah,
that's enough. I've got a lead. And again, we
yeah,
spoke about this in the past, but I guess with any commercial opportunity, it's about opening the prospect up and asking questions of them,
yeah,
and then basing that question, identifying what other data or what other information you need from them. As you said,
yeah,
you're starting a new project. When is it? What's the target audience?
yeah,
How else are you promoting? What's the lead time? What's the follow-up process, and so on. So we
yeah,
spoke about
absolutely.
sort of badge scans, which I've also just referenced there, and business cards collected, etc. Talk to me about the sort of pros and cons of that, and how else people can collect data.
Yeah. Well, the badge scan is, I always think it's a cop out, but the marketing people, for some reason, obviously, we have what's happened in the last few years is that the leads have been like segmented into two. So you have your marketing qualified leads, which is a badge scan, okay?
Yeah,
And then you have your sales qualified leads, which is a more detailed form looking at, the qualifying questions. And so if you use, for example, the BANT method, which is the budget, the authority, the need, and the time
sure.
of the requirements. So they've become segmented. And, if your goal is to get, 500 badge scans, then that's pretty much for me, and I am going to be controversial, and probably a lot of marketing people will actually hate me for this, is that uh,
Yeah,
why waste your time and energy doing a badge scan when you can actually go online on LinkedIn and get
yeah,
that data anyway, right? So
true.
why go to an event and just annoy people, say,
Yeah,
oh, can I scan your badge? Okay, it's kind of really pointless. Whereas what you need to be doing is looking at engaging conversations and getting people involved in a conversation, asking them the right questions and collecting the right data. And then if you go away with 30 qualified leads where you've got all of the qualifying information versus 500 leads, okay, that you're going to just put through the marketing filter, I can pretty much guarantee that you're going to get more business out of the 30 qualified
sure.
leads, and a lot faster as well.
Yeah, yeah. It's a blunt instrument, isn't it? That
Yeah,
again, we use it on both sides as an organizer. We get given data. Oh, that booth got 500 scans. They spent two
yeah,
grand, so the cost per scan is X, and
yeah,
and it's a bit of smoke and mirrors, if we're honest, from an organizer perspective. But again, we should be having more, business-like conversations and grown-up conversations, as we discussed
absolutely,
about
yeah,
different
absolutely,
benchmarks of
yeah,
success.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
so you've got all this data, and it might be sitting in the palm of someone's hand or on someone's laptop. But again, I guess this comes from preparation beforehand. What's your advice as to how to integrate it into the CRM? Do you think it should be done sort of real time on site? Is it just a free for all at the end? Everyone sort of, gives their business cards to one person afterwards, and the scans are sent from the organizer, and then they're sort of sifted through. What's your expert advice on how the data is integrated into a customer relationship management
yeah.
system?
I would actually say that obviously this thing needs to be planned well before the exhibition.
Sure.
Uh, if possible, incorporate it into your CRM live during the event. And I know that there are some great tools out there that allow you to integrate with your CRM straight away. And then obviously they can also send emails straight away after you've collected the data. And a lot of that thing is obviously planned well in advance, and they can segment the lists into the interest types as well. But the key advice I would give is that you have one person taking responsibility for the data.
Yeah.
and then making sure that they have a plan of action, that they allocate the leads to the right people, and they actually have a follow-up plan and accountability as well. Because the scary statistic is that over 80% of leads are not followed up after the first email.
Yeah.
And you're spending all this money in going to a trade show, collecting all of this information, having great conversations, but you don't follow them through.
Yeah.
Apart from the thank you email, thank you for coming to our trade show booth.
Yeah, and again, you should put them into your sales funnel, however you typically follow up leads, whether that's phone call, emails, whatever. Or actually, you've got a note against that lead or contact, and you've got an agreement to already follow them up.
Yeah.
On the stand. Well, you might put a date in someone's diary when they're there, right? So
Absolutely, yeah.
If there's an interest, then try and close them sooner rather than later on the follow up, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think one of the key things is bridging. I think this is where a lot of companies fall down on, is bridging that gap between collecting the data and the follow-up process. Okay, so there needs to be some kind of instrument in the middle where you actually get approval from the attendee to say, right, this is how I want to be followed up, and this is the information I'm looking for, whether that's a telephone call or an email. Or an invitation to a webinar, you've got to give them that option and that choice. Because if you just say, oh, can I scan your badge, and somebody will actually follow up, guess what's going to happen?
Not a lot.
Not a lot, exactly. Yeah. So it's going to be like a cold call. You're going to say, oh, hello, you came to our booth at X Trade Show, and then you're going to say, oh yeah, you were the people that were offering the freebie, and that's why I came to the booth.
Yeah, so that again comes from the planning, which we've covered many times, but it's really important that. So what we're saying is not just plan the metrics for success on the day.
Yeah.
It's okay. What's the plan afterwards? Okay, so if I've agreed that I need to get 500 leads or 200 conversations, let's say I get those, what am I then doing with those, and in what time frame? So setting what I guess a sort of smart objective. So
absolutely,
within 4 weeks we're going to do X, Y, Z. This one's doing that. And again, from an organizer perspective, we want to be encouraging that, not shying away from it, because the more information and data that we've got on how someone's performed, potentially, we can talk to them about doing something bigger and better and greater, or just getting them back in next time.
Absolutely,
I definitely remember that sitting on the lead portal from a show where some exhibitors just didn't even download the leads for like 6 weeks.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy.
It's
and I
mad.
think this is one of the other points I wanted to raise, that a lot of companies, especially in the B2B world, and especially in the bigger industries like aviation and broadcasting and so on, their lead cycles can be up to between 3 to 5 years from lead to sale. The cycles can be up to 5 years long. I mean, we worked with a lot of clients where the average sales cycle is up to 3 years. So what you need to be able to do is obviously track those leads and the sales conversations, and be able to assign it back to that conversation at the trade show. Because if you don't allocate it to that trade show, then obviously you're missing out on the ROI measurement from that.
And finally, how would you go about measuring staff effectiveness on the booth? And actually, how would you define that? Again, that's something else that I guess you need to agree in advance. So what's
absolutely, yeah. So we talked about the conversion rates, just like you do in your SEO, in terms of how you're converting. So when people are actually going out and saying hello, is get them to maybe have a counter and say, right, out of how many hellos that you said, how many of those converted into a conversation, how many of those converted into a demonstration. So obviously you're going to assign roles to your team. So what you do is you measure the people at the front of the booth in terms of saying hello, and how many conversions they got into people to come in for a demonstration. Then obviously you've got the presenters who are doing the demonstrations. Then you can actually see how effective they are in converting from the presentation into people leaving their details and wanting more information.
Sure. And it's important. I think
Yeah,
staff on the booths want to know how they've done. They want constructive feedback. They want praising. Like in any environment, it's a good opportunity to provide active feedback and provide data-driven performance feedback and for next time around to try and improve.
absolutely. Yeah, you need that data, because if you keep on doing the same thing, obviously you're going to get the same results. But if you
Exactly.
start measuring these little things and you start improving how people say hello, and even if it gives you 10%, improvement, the difference in that could be, one extra client that brings in, 150,000, 250,000, £1 million worth of new business.
Okay, so listen, we're out of time. Thank you so much. And I should say all the other episodes, episode 1, 2, and 3, are on the Expo Stars website. So go to expostars.com. So Lee, what we're going to be chatting about in the fifth episode, and I should say that we will put the date up in the next few days as to when that's going to be, but it'll be sometime in July. First Friday of July, I believe. So yeah, let us. What's the final piece of the TEO strategy?
Yeah, I think we've alluded to it already. It's the
Yeah,
follow-up process.
yeah,
So we're going to be talking about how do you bridge that gap between filling the form in and then the follow-up process. Looking at which department should take accountability for the follow-up process. And then obviously we're going to look at how do you actually align your follow-up process with your sales process. Okay.
sure.
And so lots of interesting pieces
Good.
of debates and things going on. We're going to be controversial as always.
And I should say, if you want to reach Lee and talk all things audience engagement, then I guess they just hit you up on LinkedIn or via the
Yeah.
website.
So www.expostars.com, my LinkedIn profile, and I'm going to be at Exhibitor Live next week as well, delivering a couple of sessions. So if there's anyone out there in the land of USA who wants to meet up at Exhibitor Live, please do get in touch.
Cool. Thank you so much, Lee, again. Thank you, everyone, for watching and listening on demand. This has been Dan Assor and Lee Ali. Have a great day.
Thank you.